Hello, I'm Monsignor Charles Minor, and welcome to this first edition of Reel to Reel. Usually when we hear the word church, we think of a large institution or some grand edifice. But we'd like on Reel to expand that definition to include you and me. We are a living church. And so our stories will be about people whose ordinary and extraordinary actions show us over and over again that we are a living, vital organism. We will be with you each Monday night at 10:30 here on Channel 17. And if you see something on this half hour you'd like to share with a friend, we are pleased to tell you that we shall repeat this program the following Saturday morning at 10:30. During this half hour, we will meet a Philadelphia policeman, Mike Furch, who has found guidance and support in the sacred scriptures, which helps him cope with the daily pressures of what we all know is a dangerous and risky job. Right now, travel with us to New Mexico to visit the Lord's Ranch, where volunteer workers provide vegetables, fruit, and wheat products for their neighbors in Juarez, Mexico.
The Lord's Ranch in Vado, New Mexico, 480 acres of desert land that has been painstakingly converted into productive soil. Today its harvest includes everything from figs to triptychal to catfish. It's a combination of hard work and the prayer life that attracts people from all over the country to join the volunteer staff. It's what convinced Bill and Marion Halloran, both in their 70s, to give up the idea of a comfortable retirement in New England and begin life anew on the ranch.
I had a good position. I was making a lot of money, and
bank director and a hospital director.
Yeah, and a lot of things going on, so that I was a kind of a big shot in the community, if you will. So we decided to give all that up.
And what was Marion's reaction to the idea of selling the house and all the furniture to go west?
She thought I was out of my mind. She said, no way.
But they did move west, and now Bill and Marion aren't the only Hallorans on the ranch. Their son Michael lives here with his wife Marianne and their daughter Rachel. Rachel is the third generation of Hallorans on the ranch and the first child to be born into the community.
I like the spiritual environment, and I also like the idea of working for the poor, working for somebody else besides myself, I felt when I was working for myself that every time I opened the Bible and read scriptures like, about the rich man and give up everything you have and go and work for the poor, I felt kind of uneasy when I read those kind of things. And now I feel that I'm being true to the gospel and being obedient to God.
Right now, the Lord's Ranch is producing more than a dozen kinds of grains and fruits. They even harvest catfish in one of the 2 man-made lakes.
Everything that we produced here is not consumed by anybody here or by anybody on this side of the border. Our goal and our vision is to produce everything that we can for the poor in Juarez.
That's why every Tuesday morning at sunup, trucks are loaded with food and sacks of grain to be transported across the border to the community's food bank in Juarez. Meanwhile, the people there are already getting their tickets and standing in line. Father Rick Thomas is the Jesuit who heads up the community. He began the food bank in 1975, but was working with the Mexican poor long before that. He sees their joy and their poverty, and in a country where there is no welfare or food stamps, he has some definite opinions on who is responsible for feeding the people.
In my opinion, it's the job of Christians. You can't pay somebody to be a Christian. And when the government has to get somebody to be good to somebody else, they have to pay them. It ought to come from the heart. It ought to come from love. And then the people appreciate it and respond to it. Whatever the government does in the line of charity is very likely to be messed up.
A typical Tuesday in Juarez, and in the midst of poverty, hundreds will gather for 2 hours of prayer and song.
The joy that you see in the faces of those people says it all. When I get over there, I get turned on, I get jumped up and down with the people because I just can't help it. I feel the same thing that they feel. We're one spirit.
The people have learned that they can worship God and have a lot of fun doing it. And they worship God by clapping, singing, shouting, cheering, dancing. I would compare God to a cook. A good cook likes to cook when the people eat and appreciate it. And if the people will come in and eat the food and appreciate it, then the cook will slave day and night to put on a good meal. Well, God is the same way. If the people appreciate what He does, He'll go to work for them.
Once the Mass is over, everyone goes to work. The men with their picks and shovels work on the new storage house on top of the mountain, while the women with the children at their sides prepare the meals. In Juarez, no work means no food, and the people work gladly.
This is going to be 140 feet long and 30 feet wide. And in here we'll also have, in this complex, we're going to have a school, we're going to have a church, we're going to have a clinic, and we're going to have houses for the people in the community to live in. What will finally evolve out of this whole thing will belong to them. It'll be the work of their hands and the Lord.
Children are the most precious thing in the Mexican culture. And there's a saying in Spanish that every child that's born has something in his hand to feed himself. That if God sends a child, He'll send the wherewithal to feed it. So the child is esteemed and valued as the most precious of all things.
Later in the afternoon, when the work is completed, the people return to the line to receive their wages. Today, it's beans, flour, peppers, dried milk, and potatoes.
Some of these people have no other source of food than what they're getting here. And they'll be very careful to pick up all this food that's on the ground. This is particularly true of the old women. And some of them are looking after a lot of children at home. And this is all that they'll have to make this do till next week when they get more food. And many of them will be retarded mentally from lack of protein when they're young. That's why getting the soybean is very important.
We came to something that has been a joy and a fulfillment of our whole lives. We're happier now together than we've ever been in our whole lives.
People say, how can you do that? Leave everything. Well, actually, most of what we have is here. We didn't leave everything.
Sarah, praise the Lord, Sarah. Praise the Lord.
Good girl, Sarah. Way to go. Praise the Lord.
If you think you're going to come down here and do this just because you're curious, forget it. Because this is not for the curious people. This is for people that truly are motivated, who want to do something for the Lord. Not for themselves, for somebody else. That's the way you serve the Lord. You serve the Lord by serving somebody else.
This morning, I would like you to draw a picture that shows me that you are a member of God. This morning, I would like you to draw a picture that shows me that you are a member of God's family.
Our Father, you are in heaven. Our Mother, you call us home. Our brother, you are the first there. Our sister, your kingdom come. Our Father, you are in my heart. Our Mother, I love your name. Our brother, you love us so much. Our sister, we do the same. Forgive us all the things we do that break the chain of hands with you. Give us this day our daily bread and hold us close, just like you said. Our Father, our brother, our sister, our mother, our God.
Hi, I'm Father Joseph Champlin, and I'm here at the Martin Luther King Memorial Library in Washington, D.C. We're sitting in a special section for the blind and the physically disabled, and the opportunities in this particular section of the library are truly incredible for the blind and the physically disabled. It reminds me that at the time of Jesus, the word handicapped really wasn't used, but it's clear that the Lord had a special solicitude for individuals who were handicapped. John the Baptist sent a delegation to the Lord and said, "Who are you?" The Lord responded and said, "Go and tell John what you've seen and heard. The blind see, the deaf hear, the dumb speak, the lame walk, and the poor have the good news preached to them." If we're followers of Christ, or anyone who is a follower of Christ, that same sort of solicitude for handicapped persons needs to be in operation. Today we'd call that mainstreaming, helping and allowing persons who are handicapped to be mainstreamed in the fullness of society and of life. We can do our share, maybe not the same that's being done here, but we can look at our buildings and see if they're open. Are there steps that are a barrier, or is there a ramp that's an entranceway for a handicapped person in a wheelchair to enter more fully into life? And when you're checking out your church or your school or your buildings, make sure a handicapped person is there to help, to give you their insights into it, or his insight or her insight. We also might look at our church services. Do we have handicapped persons there? There's a church in Virginia where a young boy, 16, proclaims the scriptures and leads in song, but there's a difference. He's 16, but he's blind from birth. But he reads from Braille. What a marvelous illustration, what a marvelous inspiration for that church to see they, in fact, have brought into the mainstream of their church life a person who is blind. The same kind of style of Jesus, concern for the blind and the lame.
John F. Kennedy International Airport in New York. 5,000 acres of noise and confusion. Every year, more than 27 million passengers from every country in the world pass through its gates. In the midst of all the madness, there's an oasis where a person can find a little peace and solitude. It's actually three places. The International Synagogue, where Orthodox, Conservative, and Reform Jews come together and worship. The Protestant Chapel, where model jets and planes hang from the ceiling beams. And Our Lady of the Skies Catholic Chapel, where the stained glass windows reach to the ceiling. Father Thomas Flanagan is pastor at Our Lady of the Skies.
Every Sunday you see new faces here. For a few passing minutes, you chat with them, or they seek your advice. We do quite a bit of counseling here, even of complete strangers who come in on a trip and they have a layover period and they want to see a priest and discuss their problems at home or at work, whatever it may be. You shake hands and say goodbye and God bless you and Godspeed, and you never see them again.
The most striking feature at the chapel is a huge statue of the Blessed Virgin atop an airplane propeller.
The idea was that the propeller, the tri-blade propeller, was the propeller on the Constellation planes, which were the popular passenger and also cargo transport planes of the day back in the late 40s and early 50s. And they thought it would be very appropriate if they had this symbol of aviation with Our Lady standing atop the propeller.
So if your travels bring you through JFK and you'd like a place to retreat from it all, visit one of these beautiful chapels. It's a refreshing respite after 2 hours in a holding pattern.
We think often about the excitement of other people's professions and the dangers involved in them. A race car driver, for instance, who can negotiate a curve going 200 miles an hour, but he's trained for that. There are other professions, however, for which there can be no preparation for the excitement and danger. Mike Fursch has a very common and very little understood profession. He deals and takes care of his fellow man. It is dangerous and sometimes risky. But we think you'll find the reasons why Mike takes the job and the strength he finds in his faith very inspiring.
I just got involved and became a policeman at that point, well, almost 10.5 years ago. And that was a new time in my life, and I thought, you know, it's a very idealistic time. I thought I was going to get on the police department and about changing the world, but at least maybe I could help somebody in some way. But if you come down and look at it realistically, you don't always help people. People aren't looking for your help a lot of the time. The police life wasn't, first of all, what I anywhere dreamed of when I first came on the force. You know, I thought, oh, I used to think when, you know, there was a policeman driving by and, you know, look at the job he's got going out there stopping crime and helping people, and, you know, it was all, you know, the pie in the sky idea, I guess. And after I got on the job for a while, that I realized that it was a profession like any other profession, which turned out to be a lot of times monotonous in what you were doing through your patrols and things. And like I said, the indifference of people, where you were trying to help them, but they didn't want your help. And I think it turned me very bitter for a while there, because they didn't want to see you at all, and they didn't want any help from you at all. Mostly assigned to the west end of the district, so...
As Mike approaches a domestic disturbance call, he talks about the uncertainty that he and every policeman faces each day.
I feel that actually a job is uncertain, because you don't know if it's merely a minor quarrel between boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, or if it's something serious, you know, where the husband or wife is a dangerous person. And how do you approach them? You know, you have to be very careful one way or the other until you more or less ascertain the facts of what is really going on. I really didn't have a turnaround in my Christian life until about 3 years ago. And after that point, I did realize that it was, you know, it's a job given to me by the Lord to get out there and do my best to help people, whether I feel bad about it or not bitter. But sometimes it doesn't always work out the way it should, that I feel it should. It may turn out to be a sour experience anyway, but still it's a learning experience, and I think that the Lord directed that. The fellows I work with are real nice, and they accept what I believe and how I express my faith and how I go about performing my faith, I think. and what the Lord would want me to do. They don't all agree with it, I think.
3512, put me back. I'm going up in the area.
Okay, 3512. A silent alarm at a private residence has been tripped, and Mike responds to the call. The possibility of coming face to face with an intruder and having to use force is another constant reality in a policeman's life.
There may be a time when I have to use force. What I try to do is, one of the main things that I base my profession on and how I act is from Luke chapter 3, verse 14. And that's where he talks to the centurions. They ask him, what are they to do to be saved? And he says, don't bully anyone, and don't accuse anyone falsely, and be content with your pay. Well, I'm content with my pay. You know, as the price of things go up, you know, I'd like to get a raise to have that stay about the same. You know, it's like we have to eat. But I don't accuse anyone for no reason. I don't accuse anyone falsely. And I don't bully anybody. I don't go out there looking to start fights. I don't go out there picking fights. And I feel if it's part of my job that I may have to get into a fight, and this is what the Lord's guiding me to, and He'll guide me through it, and He'll pick the best way for me. I get a lot of support from Joni. It's a shame. She's my backboard, maybe, I guess you would say would be a good word. She takes all the brunt of it here, where I would let off steam here for her, and she gives me feedback, you know, whether I'm doing, I feel I might be doing the right thing, but she has another opinion that might give me a different outlook at it. But Joni helps me out a lot, and then I belong to a prayer group, a charismatic prayer group, and I get a lot of support from the people in there with the other Christians that I become involved with, you know, and it's a lot of fellowship there, and I get a lot of support from that. You know, it brings me a little closer to the Lord, I think.
I, for one, would think that a wife must have fits every day. She sees her husband go out to work, or is he coming back, that kind of thing. Because I'm always aware of the dangers in the job. I don't know if this has affected, the work has affected your marriage at all. But you knew he was a policeman before you married him, right?
Yeah, we were, Mike was on the force for 5 years before we were even engaged. But it does affect you sometimes. I try not to think of it all the time as being dangerous, but it's worse at night, you know, when he goes on 3 to 11 shift or 11 to 7. It's hard, you think about it, and you worry that he won't be coming back, and especially when it's dark, because there's more crime at night. I've seen an enormous change in him in the last 5 years. About his work, he seems to enjoy it much more than he did when we first started going together. I think that was a big transitional period for him, because he had been on the force for 5 years then, and I think he had grown a lot disillusioned about his job, and I feel that he's really changed now. He seems to like it a lot more now.
What we try to do is, it doesn't always work, but we try for the most part, is to take one of my days off and spend the day just together, just the three of us. Even if it's just to go out shopping to a mall, or you know, take a ride out to see some horses at the stables, or a little farm to see some animals for our daughter. You know, just more or less like a little thrill. It's exciting to see her get excited. You know, it's good for us. Got to the point where I was seeing the bad side of life and not looking at any of the good side. And I didn't like myself for that, and I didn't like the people I was coming in contact with. I felt that I was getting to the point where I didn't like anybody, especially myself, because I knew I shouldn't have been that way, but I couldn't stop the feeling. And through my involvement with the prayer group and a closer feeling with the Lord, I feel that's all changed, and I feel that it's helped in my outlook on life, on my family, Joni and our daughter, and our friends. And
I did go to a couple of the charismatic meetings with him, and it just wasn't for me. It was, you know, it can't be for everyone. It's a somewhat of an extreme in the Catholic Church, and I feel that I personally can't share it with them, and it did cause a lot of problems for us for about a year or two. I think it is helping Mike to, you know, pull his whole life together, and I guess I more or less accept it, but...
She doesn't agree. You know, she doesn't agree with the charismatic movement, per se, you know, with some of the outlooks on it, but she has I would say it's like I wouldn't believe in maybe saying the rosary or Holy Name Society or something like that. Well, it wouldn't stop one member from going and the other member, you know, worshiping or, you know, giving thanks to God the way they do. And so that hasn't affected us.
When I go out to lunch, I bring my own lunch with me. And then while I'm eating, I usually read the Bible, have something to take my mind off the job for a little while and relax while I eat. I think it gives me a brighter aspect into the things on my job and things about life. I use it as the, you know, the basis for how I deal with people and for my whole life. So I feel it gives me a brighter outlook on my life, and it's helped me tremendously.
I found it refreshing to meet Mike, to know that one with such a positive attitude can perform so well the thankless tasks he's often called upon to do. No matter what our profession, we can all learn a little about how to face life's problems from the story of Officer Mike Furch. We hope you have enjoyed this initial segment of Reel to Reel, and I thank you for allowing me to have this last half hour with you. In the future, we shall bring you more stories, enlightening and inspirational, of Christians practicing their faith. Your input into Reel to Reel is important to us. If you have any questions, ideas, or suggestions, won't you please write us, Reel to Reel, 222 North 17th Street, Philadelphia, 19103. We look forward to hearing from you. Please plan to be with us next week at this time, when we'll take a look at an Apache Indian tribe in New Mexico and how they mesh their tradition with the Catholic faith. We'll also learn about Anchor House in Trenton, New Jersey, a home for runaway teenagers. Thanks again for joining us. Have a nice week, and God bless you.